2018, UMBC, a 16 seed nobody believed in, walks into the tournament and beats the number 1 overall seed Virginia. Most shocking upset in college basketball history. 2023, Florida Atlantic, a team from Boca Raton running a $4 million basketball budget, makes the Final Four. The bracket goes insane. Everyone loves it. Now we're in 2026 and the magic is basically gone. No team seeded 11th or worse even has a 40% shot at winning a first round game. The bracket is the chalkiest it's been in years, and most people are blaming parity or recruiting. But here's the real reason. A $2.8 billion legal settlement that was supposed to level the playing field for athletes is quietly doing the opposite. Stick around because by the end of this you'll see exactly which schools are funding their own irrelevance. So let's start with the money, because the mechanics here actually matter a lot. The House v. NCAA settlement was approved in June 2025. It ended 3 separate federal antitrust lawsuits that argued the NCAA had illegally blocked athletes from being paid. The settlement requires the NCAA to pay nearly $2.8 billion in back damages to athletes who competed from 2016 onward, and that money doesn't appear out of thin air. It comes out in $280 million annual installments over 10 years. Pulled directly from NCAA revenue distributions. That's money that used to flow down to schools. Now it's flowing back up to cover a legal bill. At the same time, schools are now required to share up to $20.5 million annually, roughly 22% of average athletic revenues, directly with their athletes. So you've got a double drain happening at once. Less money coming in from the NCAA, more money going out to rosters. Here's where the revenue waterfall gets brutal. CBS and Turner pay over $1 billion a year for March Madness rights. That check hits the NCAA, gets split into conference distributions, flows into school budgets, and then gets carved up into athlete payments. Each step of that waterfall, mid-major programs are losing ground. The back damages requirement means the NCAA has less flexibility to distribute units equitably to smaller conferences, so the waterfall delivers less water the further down you are. Now look at where that $20.5 million per school actually goes. Football takes 75%, roughly $15.4 million. Men's basketball gets 15%, about $3.1 million. Everything else, swimming, track, rowing, 456 other athletes, splits the remaining 10%, which averages out to $495 per athlete. So the system was sold as fair pay for all, but 3/4 of it goes to one sport at most schools. The waterfall looks bad system-wide, but what it actually does to a mid-major basketball program trying to compete in March is where this gets really ugly, because the numbers on the other side of this comparison are not even close. Think of this as a cash-in versus cash-out dashboard. On one side, you've got Power 4 programs, money flowing in from massive media deals, NIL collectives, donor networks. On the other side, you've got mid-majors, smaller distributions, thinner rosters, and the same $280 million annual back damages drain eating into whatever they do receive. That gap isn't new, but revenue sharing just made it permanent and structural in a way it never was before. Let's start with Kentucky. Reports put their basketball roster spend in 2025-26 at around $22 million when you combine revenue sharing with NIL frontloading. That's a program operating at or near the maximum cap, which means they're not just paying players, they're building roster depth that mid-majors physically cannot match. When a Kentucky caliber school can offer a 4-star transfer $200,000 guaranteed in revenue sharing alone, the conversation with a mid-major ends before it starts. Now flip that around and look at where the past Cinderellas actually came from. St. Peter's, the 15 seed that made the Elite 8 in 2022. Fairleigh Dickinson, the 16 seed that knocked off Purdue in 2023. Those programs were built on retained, underpaid talent. Guys who stayed because they believed in the system or had no better offers. That model is completely gone now. The transfer portal combined with revenue sharing has turned every offseason into an open auction, and mid-majors are bidding with pocket change. Most programs in that tier are working with basketball roster budgets around $2.3 million when you combine limited revenue sharing with NIL collectives. Kentucky is spending nearly 10 times that. And here's the part that makes this genuinely ugly. Mid-major schools aren't just losing the spending race, they're also losing NCAA distribution money to help cover the back damages tab they had no role in creating. Estimates put that loss at roughly $175,000 to $200,000 annually per mid-major program. Small number individually. Brutal concept. Smaller schools are literally subsidizing the settlement that's concentrating talent against them. The conference lens makes this even clearer. Gonzaga is one of the most well-run mid-major basketball programs in the country. Final Four appearances, national recruiting. Mark Few built something genuinely elite over 2 decades. But the Mountain West Conference caps their revenue sharing capacity at somewhere between $3 million and $5 million for basketball. An SE school running at full cap has 4 to 6 times that to spend on the exact same sport. And the ESPN Giant Killers model for 2026 confirms exactly what you'd expect from that financial math. No team seeded 11th or worse has even a 40% chance of winning a first-round game. In 2025, 4 matchups had upset probabilities above 40%. 8 exceeded 25%. This year, those numbers collapsed. The reason is straightforward. Elite transfers follow the money. The portal used to be a tool mid-majors could actually exploit. Grab a guy who fell through the cracks at a power school, develop him over 2 seasons, build real chemistry. That window is mostly closed now. Revenue sharing has turned the portal into a one-way conveyor belt moving talent upward. The UMBC team that beat Virginia in 2018 was built on 3 or 4 years of retained cohesive players. Try building that roster today, when every productive guy you develop is one NIL offer away from leaving for a program that can pay him 5 times more. What revenue sharing actually did is formalize the gap. The K-shaped economy is the right frame here. At the top, power programs are thriving, locking in talent, deepening rosters, extending their competitive windows every single year. At the bottom, mid-majors are running thinner, losing more players each offseason and sending teams into March that are simply less capable of sustaining a deep run even when they get genuinely hot for a game or 2. The scorecard isn't close, and the bracket is showing us the results in real time. Here's something the broadcast side doesn't advertise. CBS and Turner pay over $1 billion a year for March Madness rights. That's an enormous check written on the assumption that the tournament stays compelling. But the settlement's $280 million annual drain on NCAA distributions means there's less money flowing equitably to mid-major conferences, which means smaller sharing budgets, thinner rosters, and less competitive matchups. The broadcasters are indirectly funding a system that makes their own product less unpredictable, and the distribution model makes it worse. Performance-based payouts advantage programs with better TV ratings. Chalk games featuring Power 4 schools drive higher viewership, at least in the short term. So the system rewards predictability. A Duke versus Kentucky matchup rates higher than McNeese State against anyone. The feedback loop is real. Better ratings generate more units. More units generate more distribution cash. More cash funds better rosters. Better rosters win more games. And winning more games generates better ratings. Mid-majors get squeezed at every single turn in that loop. There's also a hard ceiling on how much the NCAA can grow broadcast revenue to offset any of this. The Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961 prohibits the NCAA from bundling media rights the way the NFL does. The NFL packages everything together and negotiates from massive collective leverage. The NCAA can't. The SCORE Act discussions in Congress are the only realistic near-term path to changing that, and those talks are early stage at best. The bigger reckoning lands in the early 2030s. The SEC's broadcast deal expires in 2034. College football playoff rights hit the open market around the same window. When those deals get restructured, mid-major conferences will have even less leverage than they do right now. Fewer units, less distribution cash, smaller sharing budgets, thinner rosters. The bracket math is now just financial math. Revenue sharing didn't democratize college basketball. It institutionalized the advantage power schools already had, and the 2026 bracket is the proof. If you're building a career in this space, the opportunity is real, but specific. Master the 22% revenue share math. Target roles in revenue sharing compliance, roster optimization analytics, and portal strategy at power conferences or rising mid-majors. Big East basketball ops, NIL strategy, and financial forecasting tied to spend data are the highest growth entry points right now. And watch for front-loaded multi-year athlete contracts becoming the new competitive weapon at programs that understand the waterfall. Next video connects all of this to conference realignment, which conferences survive the post-Cinderella era, and which ones disappear. Subscribe so you don't miss it.